Chargers. I'm Sabrina, and this is Bailey, and we are Rick. So what exactly do you do?
I am the senior pastor of a church in Marysville, Allen Creek Community Church.
How long has the church been around?
So we started in 1995, and we had 15 people meeting in a living room, and we kind of had a vision for doing church a little bit differently. So that was a million years ago. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, not this last December, but the one before that. So it feels like it went by in a heartbeat, but yeah, we're 20 years in, 21 this year.
When did you know that being a pastor was like your calling?
Well, to be a pastor of a church, right, we got an important prerequisite is you've got to be a Christian. And so my experience is a lot like most Christians, which they've intersected with the teachings of Jesus, and they decide to become his follower. So that was my story, and but it was in the middle of high school. I was born and raised in a Christian home, but like a lot of kids who are born and raised in a Christian home, sometimes you intersect with the teachings, but you don't get it. Either you don't get it or you disagree with it, and that's kind of where I was at. So I'm 15 years old, and I've been kind of raised in what it means to be a Christian, but I'm really not understanding it. So then I went to a camp experience when I was 15 years old, and there was the basic grace message of Christianity had gone right over my head. 15 years in the church, and that's the first time it came clear to me that Christianity is not about what I do to make God love me, but it is about what God has done to love me and his grace in my life, and me becoming a follower of Jesus is about receiving that. So that was a life-changing encounter for me. I mean, it just blew me away. It was like I felt like that someone had held out on me. Like somehow, ironically, though people have been telling me this message my whole life, it was so life-changing for me to feel forgiven by God and to be at peace with God that I just immediately felt like everyone needs to hear this. and it was like no one had been sharing this, and I felt like everyone needed to hear it. So then that's kind of began what we would call in Christian circles a calling, a feeling, an impression that this was what I was supposed to do, was to help people come to the same experience I had, which was this life-changing encounter.
Have you ever fallen off of the Christian bandwagon, or have you always been a Christian your whole life?
Well, like I said, I was born and raised in a Christian home, but I was not a Christian for 15 years. So, and that's something people sometimes don't understand. Like they think that there's a cultural or familial Christianity that you can be socialized into Christianity, and you can't. Not if you really understand it. So the funny saying we use at our church is God don't got no grandkids, which is to say that you don't have a relationship with God through somebody else in your family. You have a direct relationship with God, or you don't have one. So I was born and raised in a Christian home, but I didn't have any sense of what being a Christian really was. So then when I became a Christian, then it was like this stark difference night and day. So through my whole junior high experience and into my high school experience, I was not a Christian. So I was not on the bandwagon, as you put it, and not living a life that would be in any way consistent with being a Christian.
So what got you to become Christian again, since you were raised younger as a Christian and you lost it?
Yeah, well, so I guess I didn't have an enormous intellectual resistance to the teachings of the faith, but I had an emotional resistance. I mean, a really deep-seated cosmic authority problem. So I was not interested in surrendering my life or the leadership of my life, and so that's what had to change. And I don't know how to describe it other than, and this will be a common experience among a lot of people who become Christians, is the moment that they express faith in Christ, that there is an intersection with God that is profound, it is spiritual, it is emotional, but it's not entirely emotional. Maybe we'll get to this, but it is also intellectual. But that really wasn't the beginning of it for me. For me, it was just that this suddenly, that I felt like God met me, and so that changed the ball game.
What is like the best part of being a pastor to you?
The best part is life change. So I get to be on the front lines of people who are coming sometimes skeptical, sometimes very cynical about the Christian faith, and most often less intellectually skeptical, but often their lives are just in disarray or broken. And what I get to see is that when Christianity is actually applied, like not just thought about or talked about or debated, but when it's actually applied and welcomed, it changes people's lives. So I've seen, so we get to see at our church kind of frontline families being put back together. We see irreconcilable relationships where forgiveness is brought in and relationships restored. We see drug addicts being released from addictive behaviors that have plagued them their whole life. We see, so we get to see life change. We get to see people connecting with God and with one another, and they also get to then connect with mission, which changes this now through our church, changing lives around the world. So we get to see, that, and then as the guy who's the senior pastor, I kind of get front row seats to that. So that's absolutely the best part.
What would you, since when you have like a best part, there's usually a part you don't like.
Yeah.
So do you have?
Yeah. So the converse of that is that I get to have front row seats for meltdown, for a relational breakdown, for people rejecting God. I see people rejecting one another. So I get to see that because in real time, I am not just the guy who gets up and does speeches on the weekend, but a pastor also counsels, right? So I'm involved in people's lives and the outworking of their relationship with God. So if they're part of a church, they're not just coming to services, they're part of a family. And I get to be a bit of a papa of the family. And so then if there's a particular marriage that's in crisis, I get to, try to counsel them through their difficulty, and it doesn't always have a happy ending. So the worst part about that is when there's no happy ending. And I've seen some devastating decisions that people will make against what I would say is good counsel and the will of God, and it hurts. And it hurts them, it hurts their family, it hurts their children. So, I could, I'm not a pastor, I wouldn't be involved in people's lives, I wouldn't have the access to those painful moments because I'm brought in to be sometimes the counselor, the mediator. And when I am and it doesn't go well, that's hard.
Is there, like, when people are like bringing you into their lives, would you ever like object like going into it, or do you like willingly?
Well, if they welcome me in, I'm, and it's appropriate. Like sometimes there are issues that are above my pay grade. So we have a nice network of psychologists and counselors that we will refer people out to if they have those needs. There are sometimes where I'll just say, that's not something I'll I need to be a part of. Or sometimes people are looking to their pastor to be something kind of a lifesaver, or they have access to other resources that I need to connect them to. And then that's when it's more appropriate for me to subcontract out some of the stuff that comes across my desk. And that's part of me just managing my time as well, but also managing what I'm going to be best at, where I'm going to actually help people versus not. So some things I say no to.
All right, so we're gonna go into our first segment, which is psyches. This one is charming. Okay, yeah. That was really good.
Hey,
Cool.
how's the date with
Chris? It went good. You went to that
Okay, so
one
next
Asian
time
restaurant?
Journeys?
It's
Yeah.
okay.
I know.
Whoa, did I do something wrong?
Okay, that's a dumb question. We're psychic. You should know.
I guess it was. I don't know. It was just kind of more of a formality.
So, did you?
No, I didn't kiss him.
But you wanted to.
Okay, well, how was I supposed to know that you also had a crush on him?
We're psychic. How could you have not known?
Dude, I'm sorry. Just one thing led to another and...
He asked you out. I get it.
Whatever. Did you take all the paper clips?
I don't know. What do you think?
Ha! I knew you were gonna use up all the paper clips, so I bought an extra pack.
Well, I knew that you knew I was going to use all the paper clips, so I did that entire box too.
Okay, well, I knew that you knew that I knew that you were gonna do that, so I bought another pack.
Well, I knew that you knew that I knew that I knew that I was going to use them and you would buy another, so I used those two.
Whatever! This is dumb anyways. You're psychic too. You could have easily asked you out before. You saw it coming.
Yeah, but I saw he'd be happier with you.
And you didn't want to get in the way, You know it's not gonna last, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's great now, but what about when we start our relationship? What about when we eventually decide to become official? Be great for 1 month, 2 months, 3, and then it'll be a year. And then it'll be 2 years, and when I'll decide that he's the one I want to marry, and then when he asks me for my hand, I'll accept. We'll be happy for like another year, but somewhere down the road, he'll decide, like, he'll get second thoughts, and then he needs to stay late at work and won't come home till 2 in the morning. I'll ask him where he's been, he'll say paperwork. Another year goes by, and then he'll be fully committed to this other girl, and he'll call, like, the engagement off, and what do I do?
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I still have another couple years.
So, do you want to go get some?
Pizza! Yeah!
Welcome back, Chargers. So we're with Rick. So have you ever like witnessed like a God thing?
Well, my experience is pretty typical in that, and not just typical of people who are Christians or believers around the world now, in that I have never heard God audibly. And you're getting the majority of people who are religious or spiritual, not even specifically from the Christian religion, but from any religion, who believe that there's a God who speaks, that they have audibly experienced that. But that's also not only typical of my experience in modern people, but it's also experience of ancient people and even people in the Bible. A common misunderstanding is that the Bible is sort of a miracle book from first to last, and that everybody on every other page is kind of directly conversing with God the way we are sitting here talking right now, and that's not typical. So my experience of God has been through the impressions, and then the miraculous through different things, like sometimes through circumstantial things where a specific thing that's a subject of prayer then becomes an item of answered prayer when the circumstances come around to whatever it was that was being hoped for or prayed about. The most miraculous thing that I've ever experienced was when I was in college and we were part of a hospital chaplaincy team. We would go around praying for people and reading the Bible with them when they were sick. So that was our job. We weren't really there to pray prayers of healing for people, but that's what we would just pray for people. This one guy in particular, I remember him, Mr. Nels. I still remember this because he was in traction, because he had cervical cancer. He had cancer of his vertebrae. And so his back was so fragile that he had to be in suspension, and they had to rotate him literally 360 degrees every 10, 15 minutes. And we prayed for him regularly and just, read the Bible to him upside down, as I remember, a couple times, because this is kind of the situation he was in. And I remember one week I was sick, couldn't go to the hospital, made the rounds, and somebody comes back to me and said, "Rick, you'll never believe this, but Mr. Nels is healed." And I was like doubting Thomas. I did not believe it. He was about 71 years old, and I just couldn't, because I had experienced the extent of his illness, and he looked terminal. And sure enough, I walked in the next Sunday. He was sitting up in bed like I'm sitting right here now and talking to me normally, and the doctors had no explanation. His vertebrae were healed. So, but that is not, like I said, that's not typical, and I don't think for anybody it's healthy for them to base their faith on those specific experiences of the miraculous. For me, what makes Christianity believable is it's truth claims backed up by evidence, and then what happens in terms of personal experience, mine and others, just becomes sort of corroborating evidence.
As a kid, did you like want it to be anything like different from?
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest, so I think I probably had an aspiration to be a farmer, and that's probably what I would have been if I didn't feel like I was, in some sense, plucked out of my life trajectory and became a Christian. I probably would have been a farmer, although I got good grades, so my teachers were encouraging me to go into law or medicine, but probably I was headed towards farming.
So before you went to the church that you're at now,
Yeah.
were you a pastor before then, or did
Yes.
you start being a pastor?
Yeah, I was, so right out of college, I became a youth pastor. So I was that for about 4 or 5 years. And then we had developed relationships in this particular church I was at, and we decided that we had kind of landed on a vision for a different kind of church to start in Marysville. But yeah, I was youth pastor for several years before that. So junior high, senior high was what I did. So basically that was like doing church, but just doing it with students. So everything that a church does in terms of its main purposes and its mission was what I was doing as a youth pastor. But then I just transferred all that stuff to adult ministry.
How long did you have to do school?
I was, I've got a bachelor degree, so 4 years. Yeah.
When you did you help create AC3?
Yes, yeah. I'm the founding pastor of the church, right? So it was us, me, my wife, 2 senior couples, and then a bunch of interested friends in a living room, and that's how it started. Yeah, I was right there at the beginning.
So when you were pastoring at the other church, did you think about making AC3 when you were still pastoring, or did you take
Yeah.
a break from?
No, there
that
was no break.
church?
We went straight from doing youth ministry into starting this church. Yeah, and we just had a vision because, look, the experience we had was pretty typical of people here, which is that Washington is one of the most unchurched states in the Union. And so what Marysville didn't need, we thought, was just another church. But what we thought was actually useful was a church that was going to specifically be designed to communicate Christianity in a way that was accessible to people, even if they hadn't been to church in a long time or maybe never. So that was the vision, is how can we make this historic faith, which seemingly and on the surface and for many people was becoming increasingly irrelevant, relevant again.
Was there a certain reason that you chose that location for the church, the one that is right across from the skin, right?
Yeah.
Was there a specific reason?
No, although we did put some thought into the facility. The kind of facility was more important than the location at that point. I mean, location mattered to us, but being across from the skating wasn't important. What we wanted was, we didn't want a churchy looking building. We wanted a church that didn't look like a church. And that was part of what I was saying. We were trying to, basically communicate timeless truths in a really timely way that made sense to people if they hadn't been to church in a long time. Part of what makes church unappealing for folks, we realized, was just if you go into an environment where you don't get any part of it, including the architecture, then you're immediately on the defensive in the kind of feeling like you don't belong there. Some people enjoy the idea of going into a cathedral and it feels transcendent and lofty ceilings, and the architecture speaks of God. But if you're not churched, we realize that sometimes that could be off-putting. So the selection of a warehouse, which is what we did, we just renovated a warehouse, a box, and we made a church inside a big old box, was it sort of put the physical location of a church in a neutral setting, something that looked more like a theater than like a steepled church building. So the look of the place was strategic. If we ever landed on something that was going to be the facility home, that was going to be the real long-term home for the church, we'd probably like it in a different location. But to us, the style or the look of an unchurchy building, a facility for what we do, really was good for us.
It looks really cool. And I remember when I first went in there, I felt so much at home. Everyone came up to you and they were talking to you. They were giving you food. and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really cool. But
Yeah, that's cool.
So we'll be back, Chargers, after a segment.
What's up, guys? Eric here with another how-to. This time it's about spin on the ball. Step 1. As usual, you'll need ball and cleats. Step 2. Foot positioning. For this, you'll need to know where the feet go and how to strike the ball. You can either use the inside or the outside of the foot when you strike the ball. But the feet have to come at an angle. Step 3. Strike on goal. If you watch the ball when you strike it, you'll notice that while the ball is in the air, the spin causes it to make a curve. Advanced move. Now this advanced move can also put spin on the ball if you hit it properly. It is called the Rabona. You swing your foot across your other and strike it with your laces.
Welcome back, Chargers. So when we were talking about like the church like feeling like at home, is that like I don't know how to phrase this. Was that like the biggest vision when you created AC3? Because
Well, here's our mission statement. We wanted to create a safe place where irreligious people could become fully devoted followers of Jesus. So in terms of mission and message, we were really tying into the ancient Christian message, which has changed literally millions of lives for 2,000 years. We didn't really want to mess with that because that had changed all of our lives. But we were recognizing that it was increasingly distant from the life of the average non-church-going person in Marysville. So the biggest thing was not necessarily the hospitality, although that was part of it. The bigger idea was safety, safe place. Because we realized that churches had in some ways become, and sometimes unintentionally, not safe. So they had become not safe because either the church was insular, that it was just a kind of an ingrown group of people who seemed to like each other maybe, but weren't really open to other people joining. That also it would be not safe if it was very judgmental, like if you didn't wear the right clothes. If you didn't, appreciate old music, music from hundreds of years ago, then somehow it wasn't safe. And then also, and maybe this is the biggest thing about our church, is that churches could be not safe if you're not open to people's questions and their skepticism and their curious questions and pushback on Christian thought and teaching. So we said, look, we're going to be a safe place by creating an environment where we welcome those sorts of questions. So one of the hallmark things is not just our services, which we've designed to be accessible and understandable, even if you haven't been to church in a long time. We use the creative arts to communicate. A lot of drama, a lot of video, a lot of modern music and stuff like that. But then also we have a class called Investigations, where the class is really designed just to basically be a place where people can just ask their questions. So whatever it happens to be. So, questions about faith and science, and questions about whether the Bible can at all even be trusted, and questions about how they're reacting and pushing back against Christianity in a modern world. So to us, safety was the biggest thing, and that's what we tried to do: create a safe place where people who are in an investigation mode can feel like they belong.
So are you like doing anything outside of AC3 or like church?
Yes. Well, I mean, I have some hobbies. So I like all sports. I play basketball about 4 or 5 hours a week, and so I really enjoy that. And then I have a really busy family life. So I've got 2 boys, 25 and 23, and they're moving on, getting married, and my youngest getting married this summer. But then we kind of went back for round 2. I've got a foster adopt situation with 2 little girls in my home, so they're 6 and 7. So that keeps me real busy. So my wife and I got into fostering about 5 or 6 years ago. So we've had a lot of young people come through our lives, little girls, from backgrounds of abuse and neglect, and so parenting them has been a big challenge and hugely rewarding too. So.
So we're going to go to the next segment, which is student body president. Marysville Church, student body president. How's your day so far? Good. Mine was very good too. I met a lot of big people today. There was a lot of people at the school, and I just want to meet every single one. There's all such nice people. I love being ASB president. So, what are you eating? Oh, there's the bell. Nice meeting you. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey! How's your day so far? Good? Wow, that's really cool. You know what else is really cool? I was just in an article called Super Kid. It was really cool. That's also cool. Hear that? The bell's ringing. Got a blast. How's your Friday?
It's going pretty well.
Mine's doing pretty well. So what are you gonna do this weekend?
Probably just
That sounds actually pretty fun. I'm doing a lot. Too much. I'm going on a trip this weekend, but I'll be back on Monday. Let's go. I'll see you on Monday.
Excuse me, can you come here?
Yeah?
Do you know where the student body president is?
Oh, you didn't hear?
Here, what?
Oh, she was in a horrible accident.
I'm going on a trip this weekend. I'm going on a trip, and that is why I am ASB president.
Welcome back. So, I know there's like the youth group, Relic and Morph.
Yeah.
And so one time you let us, like for a fundraiser, dye your hair and wax your legs.
Yeah.
Did you openly like agree to that, or did they like push
well,
you
I
into
openly
it?
agreed to it, but it wasn't like it was my idea, if that's what you're asking. No, it was the youth leader's idea, and they were just kind of going for maximum participation. So they thought if the kids could not only see it but participate in it, then they would get the maximum amount of buy-in for the fundraiser. So hey, listen, I used to do youth ministry, so I get it. So I was into the spectacle of it, and I didn't care about the embarrassment factor. In fact, so to me it was more PR. So it was good PR for the youth group. So yeah, so there was a weekend there, several in fact, where I had pink hair. I mean, really it was bleached. Mostly it was just blonde, but it was bleached with a slight pinkish hue to it. Really, it turned orange. Is really the deal. Is my hair turned orange. So preaching with orange hair, and then perfectly smooth legs. Never had my legs waxed before, so that was an epic experience.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Was that your first time?
First time. Yes.
Did anyone make fun of you for your waxed legs or pink hair?
Not that I know of, not to my face. I'm a bit of a card and a clown, so I just played it. I just went with it. I embarrassed people. I said, you want to feel my legs? Because they're epically smooth right now. And so I made a big deal out of people touching my calves. It was ridiculus.
So you redyed your hair, you didn't like it?
Well, you know what happened? I would have let it go. I did dye my hair. But here's the thing, it was like a professional hazard. I had to conduct a funeral.
Oh.
So
yeah.
it's what I do. So to stand up there in clown hair was probably not going to go over well.
Yeah,
So I looked ridiculous, and so I decided to dye it. So then I dyed it, and then it
Yeah.
grew out.
Do you ever want to dye it back?
To pink or orange?
Yeah.
No, that's not a huge goal, but I might be game for some other spectacle. I don't mind being made fun of. So, also, by the way, I don't know if you remember, but we also did the ice bucket challenge. So
Yeah.
I would take the getting my hair dyed and my legs waxed over the ice bucket challenge any day. That was unbelievably painful.
I remember the camera was just like shaking so much after, and I felt
Yes.
really bad.
Yes,
But I
it
was dying of laughter.
It was freezing, and we did it like in the middle of the winter. So I'm
Yeah.
sitting there in 30-degree weather, and then ice all over me, and it was not fun. That part was hard. But anyway, anything for the youth, right? That's it.
Yeah.
That's kind of my attitude.
So besides dyeing hair and waxing your legs, is there anything else that you guys do at youth group?
Well, Sabrina might be the one to ask this, but the youth group does a lot of fun stuff where they do a lot of bonding activities, and then they do lessons, and they also then do some extracurricular stuff that's pretty cool, service projects and camp type stuff, which I think are really awesome. So last camp, I think there was a cool paintball course and some great ropes course type stuff. So they do a lot of fun bonding stuff along with the really great spiritually challenging stuff, really calling kids to what it means to follow Jesus when you're 15, 16, 17.
Yeah, seems fun.
Yep.
So we're like out of time, but is there like anything else you would have to add or like?
And you want to promote yourself
Some-
at all? Like, is there any events that's going on around the church that you want to promote?
Well, not other than just our normal weekend services. I mean, we're a church that for some people may be an access point into considering Christianity again if they felt like they either left it behind or felt like it didn't have anything to offer. And sometimes we like to say that that is sometimes because it has been found untried or irrelevant. And so this might be a moment, or we might be a church for people who are in the midst of a spiritual seeking process and not finding great answers and feeling like they could safely write off the church, but maybe to consider it again, to consider that there are reasons for the Christian faith that are satisfying for your heart and your mind, and there's life change there and actual power from God that's putting people's lives back together. And that's what keeps me in the game.
Well, thank you for coming, and thanks for watching Charge to Chat. We'll see you next time.
You're welcome.